upset, scared, lovable, hateable, brave, compassionate, kind, selfish, honest, frustrated, all without feeling even a little bit unnatural. And all of this isn't even to recognize how wonderfully diverse the cast of the show is, but I feel the need to at least note that 2 out of the 4 bending teachers Aang has are female. The show represents several different races, including Inuit and Asian cultures. Toph is a blind, female, Asian child. That's like 15 diversities in one. But to get back on track, I wanted to note this interesting motif in the show's villains, in which many, if not all of them, are intent on imposing their own will on the world around them. Zhao wanted to kill the moon spirit in order to destroy the waterbenders and write his name in the history books. Azula wanted to have total control over those around her. Long Feng wanted to create a Ba Sing Se that was ignorant of the war outside its walls. The entire reason the Fire Nation started this war in the first place was to impose their glory and prosperity onto the rest of the world. Even a minor villain like General Hao wanted to force Aang into the Avatar state, even though it's obvious that the Avatar state is much too powerful for any one person to have total control over. And it's in this motif that we find one of the show's most prevalent themes: balance. Avatar is a show about unbalanced people trying to find balance. Heroes and villains alike find themselves attached to ideas and beliefs that they see as safe and comforting, but ultimately stop them from growing and changing for the better as they put too much weight on any one concept of who they can be or what they should do. Aang is too attached to his own sense of childhood innocence to embrace his destiny as the Avatar. Katara is so attached to her motherly instincts that she constantly sets herself up to fail in protecting those she cares about the most. Toph is so focused on being strong and independent that she fails to accept the help that's being offered to her even when she needs it. But there's one character that embodies this balance, this concept of an unbalanced identity more than any other. It's a character that, if you've watched the show, you probably knew deep down that I was going to talk about because he's easily one of the most beloved characters. So much so that I considered not talking about him in depth because so many other people have done it before. To me, there is no better representation of what this show is about and what it means to me personally. So, let's talk about the scar on Zuko's face is iconic. The scar he received for refusing to fight his own father after speaking out in warn him. It was the scar that labeled him as the disgraced Fire Nation prince, banished from his own country by the very father he strove to make proud. It was the scar that drove him to find the Avatar, regain his honor, and return to the only happiness he's ever known and pictured from so long ago. It was the scar that identified him, defined him, given to him by those who were only ever disappointed in him because he could never live up to the standards they had set. Zuko's father, Fire Lord Ozai, was distant and abusive towards Zuko. He was someone obsessed with power and impressing those above him, and that gave him very little time for a son whom he grew to realize was nothing more than a disappointment to him. A failure who could never live up to the expectations he had set. And it was in Zuko's sister, Azula, that he found a child who could actually make him proud. Azula was everything Zuko wanted. Skilled, decisive, assertive, just as her father was. And when Ozai has the child he always wanted, he's free to throw the other one in the trash. All Zuko wanted was to make his father proud, be the child he could brag about and love and adore. Zuko wanted nothing more than his father's love, even if it had to be earned, but all he got instead was a scar for not being what his father wanted him to be. And when he's beaten down, broken, scarred by those he seeks the approval of, who else does he blame but himself? His honor as a Fire Nation prince wasn't taken away from him, he lost it. He wasn't abused by his father, he was disrespectful and deserved punishment, or at least that's how Zuko sees it. His scars are markers of his failures, the things that define him, the things he's trying to reverse or escape. The only way to get rid of his scar is to become what his father always wanted him to be. But Zuko's desperation to escape his scars are the Fire Nation. Ursa, the woman who told him to never forget who he really was. And Iroh, the man who pleaded with him to remember who he really was. The two people in his life who didn't care about the scars others were leaving him with, but who loved him all the same and wanted to help him Zuko betrays his uncle for the sake of one last shot at that happy picture, Iroh still chooses not to yell or berate him. He chooses not to be angry or hurtful. He chooses to...
How can you forgive me so easily? I thought you would be furious with me.
I was never angry with you. I was sad because I was afraid you lost your way.
And Zuko grows from this angry, aggressive child only trying to find his father's love to a man who found that there was another side of him that outweighs. Because scars don't have to define us, but they can still help us find who we are. We all feel pain and suffering. We all face hardship and endure scars. We run away from who we are only to face guilt and shame. We fail to save those that we care about the most. We fear that we aren't the person we want to be. We're scared of the world turning their back on us. We're scared of the world thinking we're not enough even for ourselves. We look back on the past, wondering what we did wrong. But it's in our struggles that we find ourselves. Avatar showcases all those things we'd rather leave behind and all those things we actively seek: war and peace, life and death, love and hate, regret and redemption. All balanced, embracing both the good and the bad. Because Avatar is not a series about escaping struggle or healing scars, but a story about finding ourselves through struggle and finding hope within ourselves. It's about finding the brightest lights we can in the darkest tunnels of our lives.
Sometimes life is like this dark tunnel. You can't always see the light at the end of the tunnel, but you can just keep moving. You will come to find better days.
It's about realizing that we don't have to face our pain and our scars alone. It's about the people around us who love us and stick with us through those struggles, who take our hands and never let go, who guide us through life and who may guide in time. It's about the worth of pain and how fighting through it with all those who love us can bring us to a better place and make us greater than we ever thought we could become. It's about fluidity, freedom, growing and changing and adapting to the variables. It's about embracing where we come from and what we believe in. It's about finding ourselves. And that, above all else, is what makes Avatar: The Last Airbender great. Hey, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, share it around on social media, Twitter, Instagram, whatever you want to share it on. It really helps me out a lot. I'd really appreciate it. And you can do so on my Patreon page, where I've recently added some new rewards, such as video previews, commentary tracks, and rambling reviews. All for only $1 a month. Can you believe it, Strapping Young Lad? Speaking of Patreon, here's all the strapping young lads who decided to give me money this month. No Community, BPZ Sculpts, Blazing Christ, and Ben Dauber. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'm gonna go rewatch Avatar.
I just get flashbacks all the time.
Are you the Avatar, Hong?
My brother and the princess became friends right away.
Bring me all your elderly!
I can still see them.
And what is it, Tim, that you see?
The terrible bending. In my mind, it keeps going back to the dialogue.
You know, I conducted a raid on the Great Library, which most said didn't even exist.
Go on.
They were just so terribly paced.
I believe, Tim, there's only one way you can deal with this trauma. You know what it is. It is your destiny.
You're right. I know what I need to do.
Now, when I say this video is brought to you by my patrons, I mean that I stupidly promised that if I reached 1,500, I would make this 3-hour video on this dumb film. Thinking, well, that would never happen. Well, here we are. Here's to you, you freaking sadists. Now, I usually try to keep it pretty positive on this channel, so consider this an exception to the rule. An exception you better have damn well enjoyed, because this doesn't work. Book 1.
You know, I conducted a raid on the Great Library, which most said didn't even exist.
Terrible film adaptations of things I love and treasure are really a dime a dozen these days. But it's difficult to understate the sheer magnitude that Shyamalan seemed to manage with The Last Airbender. And hey, don't trust me. I asked the experts.
But I don't want to kill all of them. Some deserve to live. Some.
Huh, yeah. Huh, what? Talking, yeah. It's terrible. Terrible. It's absolutely abysmal, I would say. I'd say qualifies. Get out!
Yeah, Eragon was terrible, but it was at least moderately competent on its own. Artemis Fowl is a step even worse, going out of its way to disrespect the characters, but the scripting and filmmaking was fine. The Last Airbender, on the other hand, fails in every way you could expect it to fail, and 6 other ways that you didn't, both as an adaptation and as a film by itself. 10 years this wound has festered. How bad and deep this problem goes. Katara takes a big exposition dump in the opening sequence of the film, and it's done in one of the absolute laziest ways that you can do it, because 1, it's self-aware, it knows it's telling us a story, so everything is spoken slowly and plainly, and secondly, there is no context whatsoever to even disguise that you are giving the audience exposition. Words even show up on the screen to make sure that we know what she's saying, that we think it. We have literally nothing else to focus on or distract us from this. And films have a lot less time to play with than television, so this must be pretty damn important, Shyamalan, right? Right? Typically, this technique is only ever used when there is complex information that absolutely needs to be known before the film starts and cannot be communicated easily in the story itself. Now, my favourite film ever is Blade Runner 2049, and it actually opens with a title scroll similar to this one, but every single piece of information there is complex and essential to understanding the opening of the film. The first scene has Kay hunting someone down. The opening title scroll tells us that a group of old replicants are currently being hunted after a number of them went rogue, which we partly saw in the original Blade Runner. From this context alone, we can deduce exactly why what is happening here is happening, and none of the characters have to give any clumsy expositional dialogue to do so. This information would have been extremely difficult to communicate naturally. Minimal dialogue is used in the beginning to build tension and tone, to give weight to each line these two men have. But it's also used to build character, to highlight Kay's loneliness. Having him speak about something so distant and unimportant to him would be unnatural. So the question becomes, what do we actually learn in this title crawl that is complex, needs to be known before the story starts, and cannot be easily communicated in the story itself? Well, we learned that the Avatar was the only person born amongst all of the nations who could master all 4 elements, which include air, fire, water, and earth. And then, 100 years ago, he just disappeared. And nope, nothing else, that's it, that's all we get. Knowing that it was peaceful beforehand isn't as important as knowing that the Fire Nation started a global conflict that's been going on for 100 years. But we don't even learn that here, and it would also imply that there was peace prior. Shyamalan also weirdly included that great respect was afforded to all of those who could bend their natural element, but why do we need to know this? It sets up this strange expectation that this is no longer the case, that benders are not respected. But this is not true at any point in the film, nor even remotely related to any of the conflict. Benders...
That it's making me tear, Ben!
And this is only the start of Shyamalan's exposition problems. Shyamalan repeatedly has Katara give badly written exposition in hopes it might hold together the plot points, which are like any relationship from the Big Bang Theory, poorly connected. And sometimes it's just entirely unnecessary, because just 2 minutes later, Shyamalan's Katara give even more exposition as he leapfrogs from plot point to plot point.
My brother and I live in the Southern Water Tribe. which was once a big city. Our father's off fighting in the war. My mother was taken prisoner and killed when I was young. In this time of war, food is scarce. My brother and I often go hunting for food, but unfortunately my brother isn't the best hunter in the world.
And there is not a single word here that we needed to hear. Why do we need to know that the Southern Water Tribe was once a big city? If it's to establish a sense of loss, then this is way better communicated through ruins and the environment it's set. Shyamalan shows us not a few seconds later that Sokka isn't that great of a hunter, so he's repeating what we should already be able to figure out, wasting more of his and our time. Good exposition delivery is partly about knowing which stuff you need to spell out for your audience and which stuff you can let them figure out or wonder about. Katara saying "I thought about Mom" in her opening scene when she waterbends is, clumsily delivered, but it at least tells us that their mother is probably dead or gone and she misses her. But this exposition here is completely devoid of any character dimension that makes this knowledge meaningful. It doesn't tell us anything about their relationship or what she meant to each of them. The critical writing sin here is that Shyamalan leaves no room for subtext, information not explicitly delivered in the text, but inferred or implied. By telling us everything here so explicitly, he's not letting us figure anything out. We're engaging with the film on a very shallow level. Unlike the icebergs of the Southern Water Tribe, you might say, everything is on the surface. And let's pay close attention to how the show handles this reveal in comparison. We learn about Katara's mum in the first episode, so early on, just the same, when Katara yells, "Ever since Mom died, I've been doing all the work around camp while you've been off playing soldier." This line has character and relational dimensions. It delivers exposition, but the focus is on how Katara has had to step into motherly responsibilities, which partly defines who she is, and her frustration with Sokka's dismissal of her just because he wants to be a leader like their dad. This dialogue is full of subtext. I mean, why didn't Shyamalan get this? It's not hard. He watched the same show as me, I presume, despite all evidence to the contrary. Look, give us this or don't give us the information at all, because the information isn't the important part here. What the show was really giving us was character. Shyamalan's exposition just gives us information. And Shyamalan does this sort of thing over and over and over again. Not just in Katara's narration, but in how the other characters talk as well. Kind of seen not long after has her shoehorn in this talk about the spirit world that nobody, characters or audience, follow. Oh, and Shyamalan just manages to jam in a line about Hama. You know, that character who doesn't appear in this film at all, or even this book, or even the